I answer it? Hello?
Lee, you up? Well, it's Jody. I can't find her. She's gone.
Gone? I thought she was with you.
I can't. What? You haven't seen her at all? I mean, the heck?
No, Arthur. I've been busy.
I don't know. You know how she gets when she wants to be pet. Like,
Is she
It's been 5 years of her wandering off. And this time she's just really gone.
Did you try shaking some treats?
Yeah. She's probably out there eating wet food out of God knows whose hands and sniffing catnip out of God knows whose toys and
Wait, where are you?
home.
Are you drunk again?
No.
Look,
I'm losing my mind
just
now.
relax. I'm sure she's fine. She'll be home any minute now. Take my advice. Just lay in bed and eat a little.
Eat a little. I've practically eaten 34 freaking servings of M&Ms or whatever this is. I don't.
Fine. Just go to sleep then. It'll be fine.
How do you know? I knew I couldn't trust her. She just wants whoever's going to give her the most attention and the most food.
Dude, just forget about it.
Every night I have to come home and make sure she isn't hiding gifts from all of her other lovers. Like, she's doing me dirty, man. She leaves treats in the sock drawer, mice under the bed. It never ends. She is an animal.
If she's an animal, then we're all animals.
Well, I may be stupid, but I am not an animal. You know, she thinks she's smart, taking what she can get from whatever, but she's not. She can barely keep it together.
Arthur, we're getting nowhere. How's work going?
What?
Work? You're a lawyer, right?
Barely. I keep losing all my cases. The whole world is against me. I lost my cat. I'm about to lose my job. I might as well go back to the army.
This is getting us nowhere.
I should leave her, but I can't. I just feel sorry for her.
She's grown. Let her
Her
live.
leaves. She's a child. She only wants my attention when I'm busy. What are you doing? I'm cooking. Hey, go away. I'm cooking. Go. Wait. We just don't belong together. She doesn't respect me. She doesn't even love me, for God's sake. Basically, I don't love her anymore either. I don't know. I do and I don't. It varies. It fluctuates. She'll just walk in with these white gloves on, and I don't know. I just think about that poem I wrote her. Rose, my color is white, pretty mouth and green my eyes. She doesn't even have green eyes. They're like seashells.
Well, that's a lot.
Can I come over?
I think you should just go to bed now.
Can I come over, please? Just for a minute.
Go to bed.
Okay.
He wants to come over, you know. He's going to bed instead. Finally.
I'm okay. We're okay. We're all good. Okay. I got this. Okay.
What?
Yeah, I mean, Joni just showed up.
Great. That's great, man.
Well, she was out with her friends catching mice, just like you said. Everything's okay. I'll talk to her about getting a bigger house with a bigger yard, and
Look, I'm glad and all, but all of a sudden, I have this awful headache, you know. Whatever. Let's talk about this in the morning, okay?
and she'll be able to catch more mice, and we'll have loads of treats, and
Just leave them. I don't care if this whole house gets taken over by ants.
The short story that we have is called Pretty Mouth and Green My Eyes, and it comes from a love poem that Arthur wrote to Joni, and it's ironic because Joni's eyes are the colors of seashells. In the story, there are 3 different characters. There's Arthur, who is Joni's husband, and he trusts his best friend Lee a lot. He's a lawyer, and he's having a lot of marriage problems. He is an alcoholic, but he claims that it calms him. He has a lot of mood changes, and he's very unsure about a lot of things. He used to be in the army, he's very weak, and he mirrors Salinger's PTSD from the war. And he's also worried about losing his job and his wife. And then there's Lee, which is Arthur's only New York City friend. He has gray hair, he is quite old, he is very well dressed, and he only talks to Arthur. Then there is Arthur's wife, who is Joni. She's very promiscuous, she's thought of as a child by Arthur, and she's an undiscovered actress. Then you have the setting of the story. So it takes place in New York in the 1940s. And the first scene that you see in the story is Lee's bedroom, and he's laying next to a woman and talking on the phone to Arthur. So this affects Arthur the most because Arthur in this part talks about how he wants to go back to the war and he's becoming more stressed and untrustworthy of Joni, his wife. Arthur originally lived in Connecticut, and this shows that he isn't very well adjusted to the New York City life. This is significant because Salinger had a lot of relationship issues, and so Arthur kind of mirrors him as the character. He was married a few times, and none of the relationships really worked out, and he also grew up in New York City. The biggest conflict in the story is Lee is sleeping with Arthur's wife, and the trust issues that their friendship contains. Lee doesn't have a lot of people to turn to, and so this is his only person, and the fact that there's these underlying problems that he may or may not know about really draws a question throughout the story. A few symbols that we found throughout the story is Joni's eyes. The eye color is disputed a lot because she talks about them being violet, blue, and how they're gray, and her personality is disputed a lot too because they think of her as promiscuous, but then Lee doesn't really think of her as that. Then the intelligence is always questioned. Arthur calls Joni stupid even though, he is the one that's being fooled considering she is sleeping with his best friend. There's a symbol of white gloves. Arthur prioritizes this representation of Joni's innocence, which we know isn't really there anymore. There's a few underlying themes in the story. The first one that we identified was betrayal. Lee is sleeping with Arthur's wife, and so he betrayed their friendship, and then there's going to be nothing left after they figure out that that has happened. There's also destruction because of the cigarettes at the very end of the story, where he doesn't care if it burns down the house and kills everybody. And then the theme of honesty because of Lee lying about being with Joni and knowing where she is the whole time. A couple of interesting things that you should know about this time period is that it was written in 1953, and so the Korean War ended at this time, which is a big part because Salinger took place in World War II and the Korean War. And also how women were treated in this time period because they were looked at more as property over anything else, and that's how they talk about Joni in the story. A few literary techniques that we found were, one of them was irony. It's ironic because Arthur calls to complain about his relationship issues with Lee, who is sleeping with his wife, like laying next to his wife in the bed. So then there's also repetition in the story. There's repetition of Christ and Christ's sakes in the story, which shows how Arthur can come from a lower class and has a small and indecent vocabulary. Then there are 2 significant quotes that are very important to the story and basically show what the entire story is about. One of them is, "She doesn't respect me, she doesn't even love me, for God's sakes." Basically, I don't love her anymore either. I don't know, I do and I don't. It varies and it fluctuates. This quote shows how unsure Arthur is about Joni. He is going insane and he doesn't really know what to believe anymore. And then the second one is, "Listen, I just thought you'd want to know that Joni just barged in." This is important because it shows that Arthur doesn't trust Lee, so he's lying to protect himself and make himself look less vulnerable. So some significant things about the author that you should know. He was born on January 1st of 1919, and he was the youngest of 2 children. He was the son of a rabbi who was married to a Scottish wife. At the time, mixed marriages were sort of looked at very badly. They weren't supposed to happen. He grew up in New York City, which is where the story took place, and he had a lot of trouble making friends in high school due to him being Jewish, so he didn't have great friends like Lee in the story because he only has one friend and he's sleeping with his wife. And he wasn't much of a student. He flunked out of school after his parents sent him to a military academy, and after he went there, he graduated, and then he went to Europe to learn about language, and then once he returned home, he went to college and met with Burnett, which he would later help him publish his work and make him very popular. So following the attack on Pearl Harbor, he was drafted into the Army, and he served from 1942 to 44. This was important because he continued to write, and here he created Holden Caulfield. Following the war, he had a nervous breakdown, and this took a big toll on him. He also had failed marriages with a woman from Germany and a few other women in his life throughout this period, and he relates more to the character of Arthur because of these failed relationships. When Salinger returned to New York, he started writing again. In 1951, he published Catcher in the Rye. It became extremely popular. This basically was the peak of his literary fame. After the publication, he cut off ties with everybody and moved away to New Hampshire and secluded himself and tried to keep away from the public. In 2000, Salinger's daughter wrote a negative account of her father, and it basically didn't really go anywhere. It had mixed reviews. He later married a nurse named Colleen O'Neill, and these two were married up until his death on January 27th of 2010 at his home in New Hampshire.